I'm watching this next big step for President Trump. We just finished the first 100 days. The next 100 days is really important, and part of his economic agenda is now in front of Congress, and he calls it the big, beautiful bill. It's basically the big budget. But there are some really interesting cross currents happening with Republicans, especially when it comes to Medicaid, et cetera. So set the stage for us. How do you think this will go from a 30,000-foot level?
Well, the first 100 days, in so many respects, were about solely Trump. He had executive orders. Him and his team were ready to go. They've been planning for years even, and they just unleashed them. I think it was 142 of their own ones, and reversing over 100 of Biden's in those first 100 days. But this second 100 days, to your point, is going to be about two C's, the courts and Congress, right? So he has a lot of decisions making its way through the courts. The Supreme Court's term's up in June. That will have a massive impact. But to your point, right, laws are sticky. They're a lot harder to overturn. Executive orders can come and go as we overturn a bunch of Biden's. The next Democrat might overturn some of Trump's. But laws, as we know from trying to get through with Obamacare all those years, hard to overturn. So in the House, I don't envy Mike Johnson's job for many reasons, but he's done a good job navigating it so far. But you have folks in like Don Bacon, who's a Republican, in a swing district outside of Omaha, Nebraska, that is a swing voter on this. He's a moderate Republican, but then you have harder, more red district R's who really want deep cuts, to say nothing of the Senate.
Did Don Bacon's district, that Omaha district, did that go Trump?
It went Harris. It's one of the few Harris districts represented by a Republican.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Very few.
Yeah, very.
So, and then you have somebody like a Josh Hawley from Missouri. Excuse me. I was going to say St. Louis, but represents the state of Missouri, and he has strong feelings. Now, this is all at the beginning stages. But why does all of this matter? First of all, if you're listening, this matters because the Trump tax cuts from 2017, which helped fuel economic growth, they are set to expire this year. Mm-hmm. And if the bill doesn't include these tax cuts, then everybody, including the middle class, will have an increase in their taxes. What I find kind of curious is that the Democrats are fighting on the Medicaid front rather than pointing out the middle class issue, or that Republicans aren't focusing on that enough. That will probably come. Who has the better messaging going into this fight?
I think that remains to be seen. In some ways, we haven't gotten, aside from the Medicaid part, a ton of the actual messaging about it. It's been a lot about a process. Can Republicans pass this bill? And to your point, why it matters is this is likely going to be the biggest law Trump passes, at least this year, if not his whole second term, most likely. Like, they're trying to just jam all these different topics in it, from taxes to, you're exactly right, to immigration. I think there'll be some things on there, energy. You get really a few shots at this. So everybody's going to try and get their priority out before the train leaves the station. That's why it really, really matters what's in this bill and what's not in the bill.
And what about the fact that you have such slim margins in the House? Are there enough conservative Republicans that would hold tight to make sure that there are actually more cuts?
You know, that's what the tricky part with Johnson is, right? Because they're going to demand, as you said, if they only have really one or two shots at this to pass this, they're going to want the deepest and, most complete cuts to spending possible. And you have somebody like a Don Bacon or somebody like Mike Lawler up in New York, moderate districts, swing voters. That's going to be a tough pill for them to swallow. And I thought it was notable when Don Bacon even said that he had a red line on Medicare cuts. In theory, that even just opened the negotiation that he was open to it, which I think was telling for me.
How much is President Trump going to have to weigh in here and try to get this across the finish line?
He has to be really in the weeds on this. I mean, well, you saw the budget come through earlier this year, the Mike Johnson speaker vote. When Trump makes these calls, it's a lot harder for these very deep Republican members to say no. And so he's going to have to really lean on them if he wants this passed.
Tell me a little bit more about how this is shaping the midterms. Now, it's too early to talk about the midterms, kind of. Yeah. But the reason the midterms matter is that because the margins are so narrow, mostly in the House. I think the Senate probably remains Republican, but the Democrats are going to try to win back majority. I don't see that happening right now, but there's not too long to go between now and then. There's been so many retirements.
Yes.
So people deciding to seek higher office or to just age out or to just leave, because if you can't get anything done, you don't feel productive, you don't want to be a member of Congress anymore. Okay, so how does that all set the stage for what's to come in the midterms?
I mean, look, as for what the issues we're going to be talking about next November, it's too early to tell on that. But you're exactly right. We will know the contours of the playing field. Seats like Don Bacon, whether he retires or not, will be a major factor in who wins the House. Mike Lawler, those people I just mentioned. But also, this is the problem when you and I first met each other in 2017, 2018, when I was at the NRCC. You had chair people who were there for 20 years, who had a pretty good hold in their district, even though it was more of a toss-up district on paper. They won by 10, 15 points every year. But the Republicans have what Democrats don't, which is term limits for committee chairs. So you can do 6 years on top of a committee and then you're done. So when those terms are up, people are like, well, why do I want to stick around and be a backbencher if I've been in Congress for 25 years? Mm-hmm. So a guy like Ed Royce, who was out in California, said, thanks but no thanks. So suddenly that district was a toss-up district where it never was before. So those are the ones that come online. Really, the time you're going to hear about them is the holidays. End of this year, early next.
Okay.
That's when you really get a lot of those.
And what about the Senate?
Senate, I mean, the Democrats' two biggest pickup options are Maine and in North Carolina. Susan Collins is just a dynamo. I mean, everybody thought she was going to be.
Was she going for her fifth or sixth term?
Let's see, she was elected in 98, so I don't know, do the math on that.
Okay.
But yeah, a while. And everybody left her for dead, in 2020 with Trump on the ballot, and she won overwhelmingly. So I think even Democrats are bearish on picking up that. Tillis will be a tight race, but that's it.
And Tillis is in North Carolina.
Yeah, like Ted Cruz is not going to, or no, not Ted Cruz. John Cornyn is not going to lose in Texas. Like,
could John Cornyn? So John Cornyn is a senator from Texas. He is facing a primary challenge from Ken Paxton, who is saying that he's to Cornyn's right, which I think, and I'm sure Cornyn's like, how can you be to the right of me? But maybe it's the new right. And so there will be an intra-party fight. Now, the NRSC typically always backs the incumbent. Do you think President Trump will back the incumbent here?
I mean, I think he should. Cornyn's been a great senator, and Tim Scott and the NRSC are backing Cornyn really fervently. Look, if Cornyn wins that primary, again, Democrats will make noise about it, but it's not real. I don't know what the playing field looks like if Paxton wins. I haven't done enough research on that, but if Cornyn wins, he's on to another term fairly easily.